Bandidos, what up? We got a brand new Exotic SMG this season, and everybody's wondering, is it good? Does it suck? What is the deal? Well, today we're going to get you that answer, and by the end of this video, you'll be walking away with a few great build ideas to get you rolling, so you can get out there and kick ass. Let's do this.
Wait, did we just become best friends? So nice to meet you. I think you're cool.
Piece of shit wristwatch.
So the Oxpecker is the brand new Exotic SMG. So if you look on the rewards track, you should be able to acquire it by level 69. If you're watching this later, this will be added to the general loot pool. So all you have to do is farm for exotic caches or go for that targeted loot anywhere there's SMGs and hope you get an exotic drop and that this is the one. So it's kind of a grind to get up here. Not gonna lie, 69, but it wasn't fun. Either way, here we are. So the Oxpecker is built on the MP7 SMG variant, which is actually a pretty good gun. If you're familiar with Perfect and Wavering, yeah, it's the same SMG. So on this one, mine's not god rolled or anything. It's about 115k total damage, 1283 RPMs with the setup that I have. So there's a little bit of boost there because I'm running Striker on this right now. The max size is 50, which is pretty good. Optimal range is decent, and we got a headshot damage of 70. As you would expect, you got SMG damage, crit chance, and mine came with damage to targets out of cover. I was lucky. The talent's called Symbiosis, and this is where it's at. While having a shield deployed, you lose shield health at a rate of 10% per second. It doesn't sound like a lot, and most of the time the 10% loss of shield health per second isn't a big issue, but there are plenty of situations, especially in Legendary, where it does become an issue. We'll talk about that further, but this is what it really does. Your shield receives repairs of 25% of the outgoing damage dealt by this weapon. So not skill damage or anything like that. You have to have this weapon in hand. You have to be pulling the trigger. You got to be landing those shots. And it's going to take 25% of that damage and put it back into your shield health. So the heals should outpace your shield's base degradation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the repairs are going to outpace the damage your shield is taking, especially if you're doing something like solo legendary. Trust me, I tried. Plus, you're going to have active regeneration. Active regeneration, of course, happens when you have your shield deployed. So if you have your shield deployed with the Oxpecker, your shield is going to be taking 10% damage, but that is going to be offset by whatever your active regen mods are on your shield. As far as mods on the weapon, you have a really good optimal range mod, and I like that for SMGs. A nice crit chance mod, and then they give you some extra rounds to push you up to 50. It's got a really nice look on it. It sort of feels like you have a handheld minigun when you're shooting this thing. It's quite quick. It shoots straight. It's a good gun. I imagine there's all sorts of builds running through your head where you would love to buff your shield. So I'm going to tell you right now, if anybody calls this thing OP or godly or overpowered or anything like that, I'm going to tell you right now, it's not. I've tried this in all situations. Solo heroic, I played it solo legendary, and in group legendary, there are plenty of times where this thing just doesn't hold up. I tried it with an array of builds. I tried it with an all red foundry, all red strikers. I tried putting 2 blue cores on to give the shield a little bit of health. I put on the Sawyer's knee pads, and I even ran it with the Catharsis mask. All the usual suspects when it comes to a really fun and aggressive shield build and survivability. The problem is that any added survivability to your build will take away from your repair rate. And the equation is simple. You don't need to be invulnerable. You just need to outlast the guy you're shooting. This is inviting a really aggressive playstyle. It's definitely high risk, high reward, on theme with the season. And if you're not putting out enough damage, you're gonna get flanked by enemies and shot in the back, and it doesn't matter how strong your shield is when you're getting pellets in the booty. You need to have the time to kill to take out even the strongest threats that are standing right in front of you in a reasonable amount of time so that you can move on to the next guy and then the next guy. So when it comes to making a build tanky, there's 2 things you're taking away from what this SMG can do. One is you're decreasing the amount of heals per second your shield is taking. And 2, you're decreasing your time to kill, giving the enemies more time to apply damage to you and flank you. That's an equation for trouble. In whose hands does this weapon belong? Well, I think specifically it's great for those who love to run all red builds. Those are the situations where your shield is the flimsiest. However, you could be running another SMG that puts out more damage, but I ran this all red and it slayed. It did a really good job. You didn't need any more damage than what I had provided by the build itself. For example, if I decided to run the Dark Winter and not get the shield heals, I'm sure some of those extra shots would have broke my shield and it would have been annoying because I would have been dizzy and probably died from that, even though I had amazing time to kill. So this takes away some of the risk for playing aggressively with an all red build, which you could argue is easy hard to do. because it's not major damage that ends up taking you down. It's micro damage that ends up taking you down. A bullet here, a bullet there, your shield breaks, you're dizzy, now you're dead. So this gun is fixing that problem. And that's a real problem. Would I use it for solo legendary? No, absolutely not. I don't think it's worth it. Can you do it? Yes. In order to get value out of it, you're gonna have to play aggressive. And what I found in legendary is that it works best when you choose your battles, when you go out and face tank those enemies at the right time. The problem with legendaries overall, however, is the explosives. This is not gonna help you from explosives. And that's because of staggering. What happens is when you get hit by an explosive, if you don't die, and if your shield doesn't break, and those aren't guarantees, if you happen to still be standing, you are staggered. And explosions give you a serious stagger, enough where you're not shooting and you are retracting every single bullet from all of those legendary enemies. And you go down so fast, it's not even funny. And legendary is full of explosives, it just doesn't handle that situation. So yeah, the staggering ends up being a pain in the butt. And yes, I did try this with the Sawyer's knee pads to offset the staggering, but when you're out there in solo legendary and you got tanks and grenades and whatever, your body still takes damage, even if your shield heals through it. And so you die anyways. Believe it or not, even with top DPS, basically the strongest build in the game, I was still going down, even though I was putting out shots, even if I wasn't staggered, just because there's too much damage headed your way. The shield can't keep up. And I even tried an all red foundry build with max crits and all red cores to see if I could out heal that, even with lesser outgoing damage. Nope. But in Team Legendary, it did work pretty good. If you like running all red builds and legendary content, I was impressed that I could stand in front of Chungas and take all of their damage. My shield stays up, they die before I do. Now we do have the modifiers that make your shield invulnerable. I think that takes a little value away from this gun this season, where maybe next season when we don't have that invulnerable shield thing, this gun will be maybe more interesting. But either way, it does fit, even though we have this possible invulnerable shield situation. So basically, if you look at your modifiers, and we're talking about the main one here, when you get to unstoppable, you get skill overcharge. When your shield is in overcharge, it is invulnerable. It's called shield wall. The problem is, and I found this happening to me a lot, is that there are these enemies called blacklisted enemies. They have that little symbol over their head, which is like a person icon with a slash through it. And so when they shoot you, you start to degrade your momentum really fast. And when you're in a very intense battle, you don't notice that. So the Oxpecker will prevent your shield from going down in that situation and buy you time for you to get back to invulnerable by putting out some more crits or whatever's entailed in your build. So it does have a place this season. It's sort of a fail safe. And that situation does happen more than I like it to. When it comes to the Oxpecker damaging your shield just by having it deployed, which really isn't necessary, I gotta say, because enemies can shred shields. So I think this is a redundant punishment because they've made shields super fucking weak in this game. I mean, they're basically made of paper or balsamic wood or something like that, because I don't care if you have a 6-tier shield, it goes pretty darn fast. So I think this is kind of stupid to have punishment here. I think it's pretty redundant, and sometimes it does get in the way. Most of the time it doesn't, but there are actually times this kills you because of certain situations where you get staggered and your shield takes damage. It doesn't allow you to put out shots because you're in that staggered state, and then the loss of shield health over time ends up taking it out, and that's kind of frustrating. So where would I rank this SMG? I'd probably put it as a low A tier or high B tier, but let's just call it an A tier. It does what it says it does. It's just that it's situational. In solo heroic, you could argue you don't need it. In solo legendary, it's not really worth it. In group content, whether it's heroic or group legendary, it does work quite well. You just have to pick your battles with it because of explosions and flanking enemies. You're putting yourself at very high risk. So it requires a lot of skill, and that's why I put it at a low A and a high B, because not every player will agree it's worth putting yourself in such high risk situations when you can do the same thing from behind cover. But if you like to play fast, if you like to play aggressive, this weapon is probably for you, and it does exactly what it says it does. You just have to fill it out and know your limits. So here's the build that I have for you. Really fun. There's a couple of versions I'm going to walk you through here to get you on your way with this gun, but I am running the firewall specialization so that we can get the striker shield. So if we're gonna play into the shield, let's play into the fucking shield, right? So I decided to go for the striker shield. It's gonna give us additional damage bonus per enemy standing in front of us, which is going to be 11%. Just make sure you put your bonus mods there. And then I have active regeneration to offset the damage to the shield coming from the Oxpecker. This is a 0-tier shield, and when we go to overcharge, it will be invulnerable. And then the Oxpecker is helping us get there, maintain that. It's the fail-safe against those blacklisted enemies. So I'm running 4 pieces of striker because this gun needs all the damage it can get. The value offering is that it allows builds that are very strong, very aggressive, but have paper-light shields to get out there and actually have some protection. So you could also do this with Hunter's Fury if you want to. So with this, we get 100 stacks of amplified damage at 0.65%. And then I'm running the chest piece, which is going to double that to 200, and we're definitely getting there, so don't worry. And then I got crit damage or crit chance everywhere. Because we're playing super aggressive and damage matters, I decided to pull in an extra 45% amplified damage to enemies within 15 meters, which is where we're playing, for shotguns and SMGs. So you have to rotate into the weapon to get it. It's going to last for 10 seconds, then swap weapons if you want to apply it to your other weapon, and then swap back. So I go running in with my shotgun, and then at the last second, I switch to the Oxpecker and just blast them all to hell. The ACS shotgun is really good at building up your chest piece stacks. You want to do that as fast as possible, but the Oxpecker does a pretty darn good job too. And since we're switching weapons, I decided to run with the Centurion Scabbard. So swapping weapons is going to give you one of the 2 buffs. For the SMG, I go ahead and give it the 20% rate of fire and weapon damage. It's pretty much my primary weapon. For the shotgun, it's going to have a bigger mag and faster reload speed. That's pretty strong. And you got that additional 30% swap speed, so you're doing it pretty efficiently there too. For stats, we're at 60% crit chance, which is the cap, and then we have 128% crit damage. Another really good variation is going to be the Catharsis instead of the Centurion Scabbard. So basically, as your shield takes damage, it builds stacks, which is going to give you more weapon damage. And then when it hits max stacks, which is 30, it's going to purge a heal for you and your team. So depending on the content, that could be really good. But sometimes what the problem can be is that you're moving so quickly, you don't catch those heals. You kind of leave them behind. I also ran this with protection from elites, but in the end, I decided to strip them off. But for the heroic content gameplay you see, I am running 3 protection from elite mods on that setup. And I think it did really good in heroic. So in the introduction, I mentioned there's these situations where the gun does kill you. Basically, you throw yourself out there, you make yourself vulnerable in front of a bunch of enemies. And that's the point, right? They're all shooting at your shield. You're trying to keep up, but one of these fuckers staggers you, and that keeps you from putting out damage. That damage that's coming in is a lot. I found that the degrading was contributing to my death in those situations. My recommendation is if you're running this gun, don't just go, I'll see you in Valhalla at every situation. Pick your battles, pick off a couple of enemies, and then throw yourself out there. Keep an eye on your flanks. All right, I hope you enjoyed this one. Good luck, Bandidos.
Thank you for hanging out with me. I'm Tuxedo Bandido, and if you found this video helpful, be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on the good stuff I have coming for you. And if you like content like this, be sure to check out the video I have recommended for you right here. If you have anything you would like me to cover, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And thank you to all the channel members and donors who make things possible. Tux Nation wouldn't be the same without you.
When you buy a game from Ubisoft, enter the creator code Tuxedo Bandido to support the channel. Easy peasy.
Wait, did we just become best friends?